My co-hosts Daniel and Matt.
Hello.
Hey, guys.
So, Matt, playoff time. How do you feel?
Let's go, Kyle. Non-stop playoff hockey. You know what they did this year right off from the off? They staggered the games, boys, 30 minutes apart. So whenever one's in intermission, I can just slide on over and watch the next one. It's been non-stop hockey at my house. Let's go.
So the only qualm I have is the other night I noticed it was like a 6 p.m. start and then a 6:30, and then there's an 8:30 start for like the Preds, which is crazy for Central, and then a 9. So I was like, why can't we do 6, 7, 8, and 9 if there's 4 games? Like,
yeah,
like
maybe.
That was just my one qualm, because like
at least it's better than it has been in years past.
Yes, it has been staggered, and it's been great because like usually that intermission lines up with another period that's more than likely halfway through, so you get to watch another half period while you're like in between the team that you really want to watch. So it is definitely nonstop hockey, or you could be like me and have it on 2 different screens.
Yeah,
so
I have been known to do that as well. Put up some secondary monitors. Let's go.
And so let's get into our brackets, because guys, playoffs are going on right now. And the NHL this year had a very interesting thing where they gave you until the end of the first game of each series to make your picks. And so I'm going to tell you guys right now that I went ahead and picked the Panthers to win the Cup. Dan picked the Blues to win. And Matt, I'm going to switch over to you here.
We'll see.
Tell us what happened here.
Well, what happened here, Matt?
Well, let me tell you, every year I talk about how I'm going to go with no stats. Next year, I'm just going to go from the heart and feel it. And this year I made my picks. I didn't do any stats, but the NHL decided this year they'll let you, after game 1, you can resubmit and change your picks. And I was like, well, after seeing game 1, I'm like, I get a little sneak peek of what's going on. I might could switch a game here or there. So I made a few last minute switches to Team Matt here. So instead of taking the Florida Panthers, I just thought that was too easy. They're the freaking President's Trophy winner. They're the best team in the league. I was like, where's the heart in that, Kyle? You got to pick an underdog. I'm rooting for my underdogs. I know I'm wearing the Florida Panthers jersey right now, but let's go. I switched to my boys, the Canes. Let's go.
Oh, man. And the best part about this is Matt, right before this, has a texting rant about how basically it basically just nullifies everything. Like, what's the point of being able to like get a game 1 preview and all this stuff? Like, isn't the whole point to pick ahead of time beforehand? And of course, then sure enough, we log in and he has made the change, not only with his Stanley Cup champion, but he has also changed the amount of games on some of them, because he still picked Florida to win over the Caps, but he also changed the amount of games because I think it was a sweep to begin with, and Florida lost the first game conveniently. So I just want to point that out, that it did help a little bit to Matt's favor that he waited. We're not going to hold that against him too much at the end of the year, but if there are a few extra points that Matt wins,
hey, all I'm saying is it's legal by the NHL standard this year. It's all legal. It seems a little sketch.
But by Matt's standard, it's definitely not right. But he still did it. So,
yeah.
But
it's illegal unless it benefits me. Then we'll work with it.
Yeah, and that $10 is going to feel really good from Kyle. So,
Matt, sounds like I'm playing a board game with your wife, making up the rules as we go.
Yes, definitely, Kyle. You called that right on the nose. Her whole family does that.
And I guess with that, Matt, we'll get straight into the game. So you guys tell me, and I'll start with you, Matt, which games are you excited for in the Eastern Conference?
Yeah, if I have to look at like which matchup I'm the most excited for, it's definitely this Boston Canes matchup. Bruins and Canes is the one I'm really interested in. Both two of my favorite teams in the East. I love my Bruins, and I've been rooting for the Canes for so long to make a deep run. So this is the one that's got my attention for sure.
This is kind of a loaded question now, because we've seen up to 2 games on some of these series. So, like, in my opinion, I was going in, I really liked the Kane-Boston series, but it's also now 2-0 Canes. So, like, spoiler alert, we'll talk about that one in just a second. But that's kind of taken a little bit of the juice out of it for me. So far, it's definitely the most exciting has been Pittsburgh and the Rangers. The goaltending duel on that game 1, absolutely incredible. I thought it was going to be a tight series going into it. I think both of you guys picked New York, and I picked Pittsburgh, which was an unpopular opinion. But that said, I think this series is going to have tons of juice for the remaining, because like you had the whole storyline ahead of time where Igor was like waving to the Penguins off the ice. You remember
really?
this? Yeah, this was one of the last regular season games. Like he had pitched a shutout and he was waving to them as they were going off the ice, like talking trash ahead of time. So, so I was very excited for this series. And I know like this similar thing with the Canes, like I think it was who was it in Marchand? They've been chirping all year.
Yes.
So like that has some juice to it. So yeah, I would definitely say that lower half of the bracket. The top half is just kind of like more of your juggernauts, kind of like just duking it out. So we'll see where that ends.
So Matt, if Boston loses to the Hurricanes, because currently right now they are down 2-0 to the Hurricanes, are you prepared to have another, I guess, Brad Marchand crying gif come out?
Yes, it will be sad. Yeah, for sure. They're a great team. At first, when we first did this, I had Boston upsetting Carolina, so I could see a path to victory for them. But it's going to be a tough road, especially now that we've seen 2 games. But like I said, Dan, just because they went to Carolina and lost 2 games doesn't mean they're out, because that's just the equivalent of hold and serve.
Yeah, no.
So Carolina wins 2. Boston could very well come back home and win 2 in their place, and then now you're splitting hairs. But because at least it doesn't matter if you get trounced 1 game. Okay, that's just 1 game. Let's go to the next game.
Carolina did what they needed to do at home. But for me, moving forward, regardless of if they get past Boston, which I think they are going to get past Boston, but having a third string goalie in, which we need to talk about, is crazy, because like number 1's out. I think he had some problem, and then basically like their number 2's in, and then he gets basically cross-checked in the face by Pasta. He's bleeding from the mouth. He ends up being out, so don't really know exactly all the details on that. I haven't looked. Maybe it was like a concussion protocol thing kind of for that game. I have a feeling he'll be back sooner. But then the rookie steps in, who's had like, what did you say? Three NHL games, and basically came in, steadied the ship. They end up winning that game too.
Yeah.
Funny part is though, Marchand also cross-checked him on a video. So I'm like, man, these Boston players are just like super feisty and ready to get at the goaltenders this year. But I think the Canes have enough firepower behind them that they can overcome some defensive qualms, especially against Boston. I just feel like Boston's not as good this year. Like they just haven't returned everybody, and everyone's not firing on every cylinder like they used to. They're also aging a little bit more now. So I think that the Canes are going to pull out this series eventually, but they did hold serve, and I think the goaltending issue is going to be for the Canes moving forward in the next couple of rounds. Like, can everyone stay healthy?
Yeah, when I saw the play, Pasta basically backhanded the goalie. It was kind of probably on purpose. So when the goalie went down, Antti Ranta, I didn't think he got hurt. Like, I don't know. He hit him. He's got a mask on. He just like a backhand. He didn't get cross-checked to the neck or anything. But so when I saw him bleeding, it was like, oh, that's kind of weird. That looked a little more serious than what I thought. But I anticipate he'll come back. It didn't look like a big deal. It's not like a lower body growing injury, like he ran into the post or something. That seems to be you can return from an injury like that. Maybe it was just they already were winning, so they're like, well, sit out and save it and just rest up, and we're looking forward. But I was very nervous about this new kid. His name is Peter Kochetkov.
Yeah,
my kind of hockey player right there.
Yeah,
very Russian, but he seemed to have legs. I think his first 3 games, I think he won all 3 of them. His other NHL games, so it worked well. But I agree, Dan. It's going to be a matter of you can make it through the first round. I mean, they're a 1 seed for a reason.
Yeah.
But it's going to be an issue if possibly going forward, depending on how much time Ranta has to split if he comes back with this kid.
So speaking of thrillers, let's move over to the Rangers-Penguins game. So game 1. Kyle, what do you think about triple OT to start? I mean, out the gate, you're talking crazy triple OT action.
Well, to be fair, I was not expecting the Rangers-Pens game to go into triple overtime. I mean, the last triple overtime game that I can think of was the Preds Sharks in 2017, which I have been thoroughly documented and mocked for skipping to go watch a movie, which it was a good movie, but
it wasn't triple overtime.
Wasn't triple overtime.
I'm going to say.
But it made me feel good, to see that, right out of the gate we were having a series that is going to push it all the way.
Dude, have you guys seen the stats on this first game? I think like the Penguins had like 140 shot attempts, but they had 83 shots on goal. Like, I'm sorry, Igor was doing everything he possibly can to keep him in the game. I know I pulled up a graphic from Money Puck, and it was like expected goals for the Rangers was like 3.4. They scored 3. The expected goals for the Penguins was like 7 point something, almost 8, because they were just peppering the goal with tons of shots. I mean, he basically did everything he possibly could. But crazy part is, in the second OT, rookie goaltender comes in relief and is able to keep it perfect through OT and get the win. Like, what a great story. Like, I mean, and it was crazy because, like, I saw the locker room interaction afterwards, and I think they ended up giving him, like, the little special hat. You know how, like, every team has something that they do? They gave it to him, and he's like, no, guys, like, let's be honest, like, you know, he did do, like, most of the game, but it was a very cool thing to see another rookie goaltender come in and basically do fairly well. I mean, I think they said, like, through the first 2 games or the first 2 nights, we had like 19 goaltenders. It was something crazy like that. So
yeah, it seems to be it's going to be another emergency backup goalie kind of a year, it looks like. And I tell you what, while it's on my mind, I saw a stat actually from Gary Bettman the other day. He was in the first game, which was the Carolina game, and he was shooting some stats, I guess, at the broadcast, or he just happened to be talking to Gary Bettman. I don't know if that was a joke or not, but he was like, yeah, Gary Bettman said that in the last 10 years, more penalties have been called in the playoffs than in the regular season, like per game.
That's not good for the Preds.
But that's something that startles people because we always say that, refs hang up the whistle in the playoffs. But he said, no, that they actually get more penalties called. And it's not something I realize because the average fan thinks that no penalties are called because the play is more rough and tumble, definitely harder, but there's actually being more penalties called than you think.
Well, that said, I don't know if that's going to factor in well for the Preds in their series because let's say that we already lead the league in fighting majors and like taking penalties, and you're talking about an Avs team with a crazy power play. So
actually, the counter opposite, the Preds they go on the penalty kill the most in the league, and the Avalanche go on the power play the most in the league.
Exactly.
That's the exact opposite of what you want.
Especially with a power play that's as dangerous as the Avs are with all their star power. But that said, I have to admit though, Kyle, we got to flip over to your boy and Ovi and the Caps in that series and what's going on. So, like, we have some competing factors. Like, you know, we kind of have a Florida Panthers jersey already represented at the table. I'm surprised you did not have your hoodie for the Caps on tonight. But who comes up with a big, shocking win on the road?
You know, I should have picked the Capitals to beat the Penguins, but considering the fact that, sorry, not the Penguins beat the Capitals, but I should have picked the Capitals to beat the Panthers. Get that right here. But considering how I am a big Capitals fan, I'm not ashamed of it. The fact they came in at the wild card spot, they just kind of tailed off towards the end, and the Panthers are so hot, I decided, Matt, to basically be like, look, I'm going to pick the Panthers over the Capitals. And sure enough, well, no, all 3 of us picked the Panthers to beat the Capitals, and all 3 of us were shocked when we find out that the Panthers dropped game 1 at home.
Well, my look of dismal to you, my thumbs down, was because you're just a fair weathers Cap fan. You were all about them a year or 2 ago, and now that they're coming in the wild card seed, you're running scared with your tail tucked between your leg, and you got to pick the Panthers.
You know, I didn't change my bracket though.
Oh,
well,
got him.
All right,
how many games did you pick originally? 4?
No.
I'm gonna pull up the screenshot. Don't make me pull it up. I'm gonna pull up the screenshot. What are you saying, Kyle?
All I was going to say is, you know, Ovi's a great player. Oh, wait, you got it up there? What you got?
Oh, man. It looks like that's a 4. I'm just going to hold it up to the camera.
4, really?
Yeah. He picked Panthers over Capitals in 4. Yeah.
Good thing we got that resubmission.
Got that? Yeah. Give me that reroll odds. Hey, remember, as of tonight, though, everyone still has a possible 404 points. Matt would not have been at that, just as a reminder. But that said,
I will say it doesn't matter how many first rounds you get because the points get way bigger.
That's way more important.
Once you get the second round, third round, it starts turning from like 10 points to 50 points to 100 points.
Yeah, it's like your finals is like the most important pick, honestly.
And we have a very diversified, in our league this year, our little NHL bracket challenge, we have a very diversified list of the winners and the runners-up for the finals. It's going to be very good this year.
So what I didn't expect from this game was the Caps coming back on the road and scoring 3 unanswered goals to win. I found that absolutely crazy. And you know who starts it off and ties it off? And you know, to begin with, your man, koozie, baby.
Yeah, I saw that stupid Selly. Screw that
get
crap.
Get ready for it.
NHL even gave a wonderful retweet of a koozie Selly's back in the playoffs.
Oh, man.
That's the league's worst.
It's Matt's least favorite. I swear, like, for the last 5 years that we've been watching it, like, especially when we were watching it, like, in person, on the couch in here, every time he would score, regardless if that was the outcome he wanted, regardless if he wanted the Capitals to win, he hates that Selly. But I do have to rub it in every single year because he was the one that starts it off. And of course, Oshie shows up. Apparently, he just like lives for this and the spotlight. So this is going to be interesting. They're playing again tonight. I fully expect the Panthers to come out and win this game. I think they're going to rebound tonight. If they lose this one, it's going to be interesting. Our brackets are already going to be in a little bit of parity here.
But what do you guys think about Tampa Bay and Toronto, though? Because Tampa Bay is now the two-time defending Stanley Cup champion. And the Lightning, sorry, not the Lightning, but the Leafs, when's the last time they actually won a first-round series? It's been a long time.
Yeah, it's been like 50 years.
I'm trying to remember the stat. I think it's been like 30 years since a cup, but 18 years of like not making it out of the first round, like perennial chokers. I mean, it's really bad at this point, and like everyone is saying, this is the year. Like Matthews is like smoking hot. Marner's actually playing well. Like they got it all coming for him. Well, game one kind of looked like that. Toronto comes out, smokes. What happened? There was like a 5-minute major. Am I right?
Something like that.
There's a cross check to the face. We get a game misconduct and a 5-minute major. And the Lightning do not score a single goal on that entire 5-minute, which I'm like, if you're a betting man, yeah, right. Especially with how hot the Lightning's power play has been recently. And they basically took that momentum and they turned it on the Lightning because after that kill, it was a 5-0 game. And I was like, man, maybe the Leafs are legit. But then, sure enough, the Lightning come back and do exactly what they need to do in game 2 and actually win.
Yeah, like I said, that's one game. We shut it down, start over the next day, and you're still on the road. So again, it's about hold and serve. Really, when you get to a veteran juggernaut team like the Lightning, it's really about, it's almost like a boxing match. You want to pace yourself. You don't want to, if you know you're going to lose this game, okay, let's sit down. We got it lost. Let's come back to the next one, round 2 or whatever. It's really about pacing. And lost my train of thought, something else I was going to say. But concerning Tampa Bay, they have been here so here's the deal with Toronto. Let me start there first. Toronto, this is the best year they've had in, forever. So Matthews is the best. Yeah. They've had the most wins they've had in franchise history this year, I think. But they are perennial chokers. And Tampa Bay, I thought, well, they're not hungry anymore. They've been here. The odds that they're going to three-peat are very low. And there might be a tired team. They're wore out, whatever. They don't have a thirst for the cup. Like, remember how the Predators, when they were that wild card, they came in, they had that thirst. They wanted it. They outworked their opponents because they had a chip on their shoulder to be there and prove themselves. Well, Tampa Bay doesn't have that anymore. But what they do have is grit and determination and a skill set for the playoffs that Toronto doesn't have. And I think when it comes to like finishing the chess match, finishing the round of boxing, they're going to come out on top because they just know what it takes to get those gritty, tough areas and overcome when the playoffs or the championships are on the line. That's the Tampa Bay Lightning. They're freaking clutch.
Yeah, I have to fully agree. I think the veteran presence there and what Cooper is doing, he is an excellent coach. Like, you cannot slice it or dice it any other way at this point. What he has done and what he continues to do to rally them every single year despite some of the roster changes. And I know people are going to be at us in the comments with the long-term injury reserve thing. Like, I get it, but this year didn't really happen, and they're still doing well. Like I said, the biggest takeaway from these games is, as Matt said, if you're playing the first 2 at home, you need to hold serve. You have to win the first 2. And if the road team comes in and takes one, they did exactly what they needed to do in that first 2 games. That's simple put. Like, I don't care how bad that first game was for the Lightning because they lost by 5, and the Preds lost their first game by 5. The Lightning are a veteran team, and they rebounded because they have that veteran presence, and they were able to do it. They were able to come in clutch and steal one on the road. Now they have home field, and they have to hold serve. So that said, I think that's going to be a great series. I honestly think the Leafs choke again, but we'll see what happens. So.
Well, they can't choke because I told my father-in-law, who's Canadian, that I actually picked them to actually beat Tampa.
Oh, you did?
I did.
Who'd you pick, Dan?
I picked the Lightning.
Yeah, same.
So let's go on to the Western side.
I just physically cannot pick them right now, like to make it out of the first until they prove me wrong. Prove me wrong, like that you can get past the first round, and then I'll pick you. But like I just can't at this point.
You got to have some faith, though. So like I said, let's go over to the Western side and let's talk about the Flames and the Stars, because that is one series that the Preds were actually, well, say Preds fans were wanting the Preds to be able to play the Flames because they were considered the easier of the two number one seeds. And you know, we had this thing that Matt sent us that had like a
it was a probability chart.
Possible outcome.
Yeah, it was a probability chart. 9 different probabilities depending on the results, and only one of them, which was a Nashville regulation loss and a Dallas win, would have the Preds play in Colorado. Anything else, they'd play Calgary. And sure enough, the stars aligned, and we got that very rare chance to play Colorado, which now we see is happening. And so now you've got Flames and the Stars, and they come out. Calgary wins game 1 by probably the smallest score we saw of all the first games, which was 1-0. And so, Daniel, we'll start with you. What do you think about that?
I thought this game was incredibly defensive, especially with how many points the Flames have been scoring this year. I thought it would be a little bit more, but then I also was sitting there thinking, well, Dallas also had some of the lowest goals against. They're just a very defensive team. They don't score a whole lot. And that's the problem with Dallas, is like they are severely offensively challenged because they have like 3 people doing all of their offense. I think they said it was like Pavelski, Robertson, and who else is on the top line with him? Ben, maybe. I can't. Literally, that's like more than 50% of their like offense. And if you shut them down, they get 0, which happened. So I think that's the Flames' obvious goal, and you can see that out the gate, is they're wanting to neutralize the Stars' top line, and I think this is going to be a fairly quick series. I think the Flames have them completely outmatched, but we'll see. I think Dallas can keep it close, and if they can keep the games close, they might be able to steal 1 or 2, but so far, I think it's going to be too much to overcome for the Dallas Stars.
And so, Matt, looking at your bracket here, I see that you have got Dallas winning this game in 6. Do you still agree with that after watching the first game?
Yeah. The main thing is, so Dallas is, I think they're a wild card 2, so they're the worst team in the West. Or they're wild card 1.
No, they're wild card 1. We're the worst team in the West.
Sorry, whatever. So you're playing the number 1 seed. So just the fact that they can hang with the number 1 seed on the road is enough to prove to me that that is legit, that they have a shot. So a theme I had this year with my bracket is I love personally picking underdogs. I root for the little guy to get over the hump and do something great. I love to see that. And Dallas has had such a diverse way of scoring this year. I guess you say you're seeing younger people and talents that aren't really used to shining this year. They're also still hungry. You know, they've been a first round bubble team the last couple times. I know they went deep a couple times ago, but they've got something on the plate, some meat on the bone that they want to go deeper. They have a hunger, and I kind of feel like Calgary. I've been pushing Calgary to go deep for years, and they never do. I feel kind of like they're like Toronto, just one notch higher, that they always fail. When the money's on the line, they can't do it. So I'm looking for a young Dallas scrappy team like them. They could possibly do some damage to Calgary. And yeah, I know I picked an upset, but that's kind of something I want to do this year, pick upsets, and I think it is possible.
I will say that the Flames format is my Avalanche. Like, we've, in subsequent years in our brackets, picked either the Flames or Colorado to go very far, and they've literally let us down every single year. So it's kind of like we have this jaded bias against the two teams. But I will say, like, I do think that the games are going to be really close with Dallas. Like, I do think that they're going to be able to eke out a couple. I do laugh, though, because you did have 5 games, Dallas in 5, and you bumped it up to 6, too, afterwards. So
yeah, I don't know what that was about, but
well, it was probably after the first loss. So I mean,
might have been. But before we skip topics, I would like to still talk about the fact that how the Predators
that's what I was going to say.
They're in, because not only did you say, well, they lost the last regulation game, they blew a 4-goal lead against the Arizona Coyotes. Or no, who was it? No, Arizona
Coyotes, because the Coyotes did the same thing to Dallas the game before. So Dallas was literally leading by 3 goals going into the final period, and they ended up scoring 3 straight goals and then winning in OT. So Dallas didn't get 2 points instead of 1.
And then
The Preds it happened to the Preds, and then that same night was the same night that the Flames, the current opponent for the Stars, ended up scoring with 0.1 seconds. And we ended up losing that game.
Yeah,
which
that was the game they had another controversial call to start that shouldn't have been called back. The game shouldn't have went to OT. So you're talking about like a multiple
it was like
ways of how the Preds have their destiny has been changed by small factors. And then in another game, who was it? Dallas had an emergency backup goalie. It was either for them or against them, and that determined the fate of that game. They were playing against a team that had emergency backup goalies. So
it was Anaheim.
So Dallas,
that was their last game of the season.
So they easily beat Anaheim and got 2 points, which was another way that they just barely made over the hump for the Preds.
I mean, you got to think how crazy is that all those things line up. I mean, literally, you have like a controversial goal goes to, and then on top of that, even with the controversial goal, you were winning that game. Saros gets injured. That was what it was. Remember, Matt?
Yeah.
Saros gets injured. Riddick comes in. He doesn't seal the post, and then you get scored on with 0.1 second, and then you end up losing an OT to drop the point, and then you also choke 3 or 4 goals on the Coyotes.
Yeah, it was they blew a 3 or 4 goal lead.
The probability of them making this wild card spot went from like hardly anything to literally 100% in just a matter of small, find moments. And it blows my mind because apparently the Flames just did not want to play the Predators because, I mean, like they stuck it to them, credit to it. But I mean, the fact that we even got to this point is so improbable that it was hilarious to me. But once again, credit to the Stars, credit to the Flames. Preds made the playoffs. That's all we care about. But, yeah, I mean, absolutely crazy how they got there.
And so now we'll move on to the Edmonton LA game. And for this one, I picked LA was going to beat Edmonton in 6 games. First game, I thought was going to go into overtime, but LA kind of pulled the win out. Second game, Edmonton rights the ship and blows them out 6-0. And so now it makes me wonder if my pick may be incorrect. But I will say the reason why I've picked this is because Edmonton also has that history of choking, and LA is another scrappy team. They had this same exact situation one year where they came in a lower seed and they ended up winning the cup
multiple times.
I don't know if it was. I think they were actually lower than the 3rd spot in the Pacific.
They were a wild card when they won the cup. Yeah.
So I think LA can still pull it out, even though it was a 6-0. They lost the second game 6-0 because now they're going to go back home. As Daniel says, it's LA's time to hold serve and get it. And so, Daniel, you over here wanting to say something, so we'll start with you.
Yeah, that's my whole point is like they did what they needed to do. They got 1 game on the road. I mean, regardless of how bad the second game was, once again, we're seeing a pattern of certain teams doing this. And I also want to point that out as the silver lining for the Preds. Like, if the Preds somehow come out tonight, which is very low probability, and somehow steal 1 from Colorado, guess what? At the end of the day, you don't care that the score was 7-2 in the first game. You don't. And it's the same thing with the Kings. The Kings won the first game. They played a great, gritty game, eked it out 4-3. Second one, obviously adjustments were made. They got creamed. Okay. But you got the one on the road. So can you go home and actually replicate it and take home ice? I think one of the X factors for them might be Quick. I think Quick got the start in game 1, correct? Yes.
I think so.
He was playing phenomenal in game 1. So I think that's going to be interesting because he is getting a little older, but he is proving that he can be a goalie that can steal a game or two. So I think that combined with their scrappiness is going to make this series kind of extend. I still have the Oilers winning the series. That was my pick ahead of the games. But that said, I think this is going to be a very fun competitive series inside this little hemisphere over here because this is a matchup. I can't remember how many years has it been since they've matched up, or is this the first time they've ever matched up? I think it was the first time they've ever matched up in the playoffs. I thought I saw a graphic for that, which I thought was kind of cool. So,
yeah, if I had to pick an underdog, the Kings are my favorite underdog team this year to make a deep move. It's just odd with them because Edmonton is like a one-trick pony. They got one hot line there, or your 1-2 punch in McDavid and Draisaitl. They're kind of weak in net. Here's the thing with the Kings. They are an excellent team defensively. They're top 5. I've got a stat here. They're top 5 in the league in expected goals against, shots against, attempts against, slot shots against, rush chances, cycle chances, rebound chances, quality chances. They are excellent defensively, but here's the big is Drew Doughty's hurt. Drew Doughty had surgery, season-ending surgery. He's out. So that's their big piece of the puzzle. That's their big guy. So I heard some of the other guys, like on Spit and Chicklets, talk about how they were ribbing the Kings, saying, well, they're basically an AHL team at this point because they're without their big guy. They're without their best pieces. And I'm like, well, I don't know, man. They still have it. The stats don't lie. They're down one missing piece. But what did the Preds do a couple years ago when they were missing, I guess, Johansson? I mean, that was their top 3
and
scorer.
Fiala. Yeah. It was Johansson, Fiala, and Fisher got all injured because that was the year that we had Black Ace Freddie Goodrow, baby, who is now tearing it up for the Wild, I might add. But Freddie
Fiala this year too.
Freddie G. That's kind of like a pan though. Like him and Granlund have had very similar stats. I mean, it's almost been like 1 for 1. So it's been honestly, that's been a good trade for both teams. I feel like because like it got Fiala out of here with his attitude, and that was not messing. It wasn't meshing with our locker room, and then we got Granlund, who has been incredible as far as that's concerned. So I think both ended up, winning on that. But that said, that was the year that Freddie G had his sweater hanging on a little cabinet. Remember? Like they had that picture of the locker room. He didn't even have a spot. And like literally they had all of his stuff like just in the middle of the room on like a floor like cabinet. And I'm like, that's how bad it was. So yeah, I don't think they're injured as much as people are letting on to it. Like I think that's a stiffer competition team than anybody out there for the injuries that they have. So
I think the big issue is there's so much expectations on Edmonton that people are trying to push them to say, oh, yeah, it'll be easy. They got an easy first round against the Kings. And it's not as easy as they thought. Edmonton's, yeah, they're great, but they're a solvable puzzle, so to say. And combine that with who I'm going to call Mick regular season, it'll be all right.
A Mick regular season is great. He can have the McRib on the side from McDonald's. But that said, my whole thing to your point is the Oilers can never find defense in the playoffs. They've never been able to find it. They've never been able to solve the goaltending problem, which I said that, and Smith pitches a shutout last night. But that said, that's been their biggest problem, and I think that's going to bite them in the butt at some point, whether it's the Kings or whether it's the Flames or Dallas in the next round. Like, I think that is going to be a problem for them still. Like, they can score goals, but they get scored on a lot.
Now we'll go over to the Minnesota Wild and St. Louis Blues. I have got the Wild beating St. Louis in 7. What do you guys got? We'll start with you, Dan.
Let me pull it. I'm obviously picking the Blues in 7. So I think this was, in my opinion, the matchup that had the most juice coming into it as far as the two teams, because the two teams were also like consequently two of the hottest teams in the NHL coming into the series. Honestly, if the Blues are on one side of the bracket and the Wild are on the other, I'm probably picking those two to meet in the finals because of how hot they were coming into this, which is almost a shame because it's like these two teams are a first-round matchup, and we've seen it. Like, both the games have been very lopsided. They have a lot of offensive firepower. They also have underlying fairly good defense. You have a 1-2 punch. I think it's Bennington and Husso right now, and Husso's been incredible for them. And then on the other side, you have Fleury, and I think is it Talbot still? Or
I think it's Talbot.
Yeah. So they both have 1-2 goalie combinations that are incredible. They're both also getting really good offense from like some, like underlying players. I know Fiala's given the Wild a big boost. What is it?
Kiprusoff
has been crazy. But I think Perron had the hat trick in the first game, and then Kiprusoff had the hat trick in the second game. So this series is shaping up exactly how I thought it was going to be. Absolutely incredible. Two smoking hot teams coming in, and on top of that, I will say that the Blues getting that first one, that was huge. So now the shoes on the other foot. The Blues play really well at home too. So this is going to be a tough series for the Wild to overcome. They're going to have to steal another one from them to get it back, that home advantage. I once again, I have the Blues winning the Cup. And I was literally at this point where if I didn't pick the Blues, I would have probably picked the Wild to win the Cup because it was that close in my opinion. I picked 7 games, you picked 7 games. I think Matt picked 7 games, and it was the Blues.
Yep.
So that said, this was the hardest pick for me first round by far.
I would have to agree. This one to the point, like I can do research and statistics, but it's going to be a coin toss. They're both equally excellent. I think the big wild card, or maybe say a hot button issue for each team, is that the Blues are a bigger physical team, and they're going to wear down the Wild. So if they happen to make it past the first round, they go 7 games, that's going to wear them out. Just like the Pittsburgh game went to triple overtime the other night. You're going to be so freaking tired by the end of round 1. You're going to be toast. But the Wild factor for the Minnesota Wild is Marc-Andre Fleury. You had a couple of years ago when he was with Vegas, he had a bad game or two, and my wife kind of says she doesn't like me to say that Vegas lost because of Fleury, but
they did.
Kind of did. So he's a little older. He's a veteran presence. He is the X factor. Might be a better way to say it. He can be hot. He traditionally is, but he might also have a couple oopsies, and there goes your series.
Yeah, I think it's going to be incredibly close. And like I said, it's been really fun to watch so far. I mean, it's been, I dare say, wild. And it is going to get even great. Like Kyle's already rolling his eyes. Go ahead, Kyle.
Well, I was going to say, we've been kind of circling the team here, and it's talking about Matt goalies losing a game for us.
Ooh.
Do you think David Riddick is responsible for the Preds losing game 1, or is it an overall team effort? And before you guys give your points, you have to remember, Saros is our goalie. He is our top goalie, and he gets injured the very last game of the season with a high ankle sprain. Immediately, it leads to questions because you're like, oh, crap, we've got David Riddick, also known as Big Save Dave, to come out and play. We get in game 1, and, he allows 5 goals in the first 20 minutes of the game. Not all of them were his fault. Some of it was on the team. But, man, Daniel, that goal from Cale Makar on him just showed you the big difference between Saros and Dave.
How much time do you got, Kyle?
Yeah,
let's park it right here. Okay. So I'm just going to do a quick recap. Saros gets injured in the Flames game at the end. Obviously, we've already talked about the absolute craziness that has ensued since then. First of all, that game. Also, Riddick didn't seal the post, and we end up losing. Just want to point that out. Neither here nor there. That was not on the defense. Not on the defense because there was a camera angle, and Matt and I were talking about it. There was a beautiful shot where it panned to the right, and it's in slow-mo, and there is a gap about this big. And I'm like, well, there you go. The disparity from Saros to Riddick is absolutely startling because when you're watching him, and especially, I felt like Riddick, the first couple of games as a backup earlier in the year, looked a lot more solid. But as the year went on, every subsequent backup game was terrible. And you started seeing that, and Hynes started running back-to-backs even with Saros later in the year. I mean, there was literally back-to-back games where Saros was starting. I mean, that's crazy for goaltenders. And the fact that he has that little confidence in Riddick at that point in the year was already telling. That he knew that Riddick was not doing well. Riddick also, his rebound control is absolutely terrible. He's not square to the puck. Anyway, can go on for days. So basically, it turned into no save Dave. So the stats online had him at 0.87 expected goals for that game against Colorado, and he had 5 hung against him. That is not good, my friends. That is not good at all.
And let's not forget that I looked at the Preds stat page today for the playoffs. David Riddick threw just one half of a period, had a .615 save percentage and a 19, almost 20 goals against average.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I don't want him starting the rest of the series. Defense or not, that's terrible.
Yeah, so we already have confirmed that Ingram is starting tonight, which I feel like is fairly obvious to say because he came in and after that point the kid played 2.5 periods, and the game was close. Like, it was a competitive game. I think it was the score after Ingram came in was 2-2 or 3-2. That said, that is way more competitive. If you have an expected goals of 0.87 and you have 5 hung on you in the first 5 minutes, that's bad. Now, that said, there was a couple, like, Ekholm had a turnover. There was some weird stuff going on. They didn't help the situation. But the one that absolutely got underneath my skin, and I put it in the group, was the Cale Makar goal. Cale Makar makes a nice nifty move, of course, like he always does, around the other side, darts in towards the goal. With Saros, he's usually very square. He's very upright because he's a short goaltender, and he has to be to compensate for that. Dave is 6'3", I'm pretty sure, okay? So got a little bit extra room there, on Saros. But the thing that I'm noticing is his rebound control is terrible, and he's not following well, because as Makar's coming in, that's when you got to seal up that front post. Like, you got to go all the way over and seal up that post. But instead, he's still kind of like looking out here for other options and not trusting his defense. And sure enough, when Makar goes to shoot, Dave actually scrunches in and over and hunches down in the slow-mo, because I went back and looked at it. And the puck ends up hitting his shoulder, glancing off, and then going up into the goal. If he is standing square, or if he is blocking the pole, like sealing the post, that's not a goal. And that tells me right then and there, he's not reading the plays well. He doesn't have confidence with whoever's in front defending him, because like Saros would have been all over that post, and that's where it would have been. If it would have gone anywhere, it would have been like the little tiny corner above where like you have to put it. But that wasn't an incredible goal by Makar. It was literally Riddick not reading it well. And I hate to say that, like, because Makar has had some fantastic goals from the angle. That wasn't a fantastic goal. That was straight on Riddick.
Well, you said it. So let me take a slightly different angle from it. So Dave Riddick's not, like you said, the disparity is huge. Saros is one of the best in the league, and Riddick is really not hardly an NHL player. I mean, he is, but like as far as caliber quality. So that being said, your third string guy, whatever his name is, comes in and holds the fort down. So you got to start him for a game. Was it tonight? 3?
It's game 2.
Game 2 tonight. So you got to start him. And here's the wild thing is, it really doesn't matter what your caliber is, what your expectations are. It matters about who's hot. And I don't care if this third string goalie who plays in the AHL has any pedigree to his name or not. He might just be a little bit more hot at the moment than Dave Riddick is. He might just have what it takes, a little more well settled on his lines, and going post to post whenever you go left to right. They might just have it, and it might just be what it takes. And that's the hard part. And I think a couple other teams in years past have struggled with that. They've struggled with sitting like Marc-Andre Fleury and playing the second string goalie who's hot. But in this case for Nashville, even though it's a third string, it's going to be what it takes to have any chance in the series. And I think Dom at The Athletic already said the Predators only had like a 8% chance of winning the series as it was to begin with. So then you combine that with Saros out, you combine that with your second string goalie laying the egg. You got to try anything, and you have to do it sooner rather than later. I don't want to see Riddick in game 2. Go ahead and make whatever change you can to try to stop the bleeding as fast as possible.
Ingram is starting tonight. That's already been confirmed. I think this goes back to some of these other teams too. Colorado obviously has to hold serve. So if the Preds come in tonight and somehow miraculously steal one, you still got the desired result that you wanted. At the end of the day, like, no matter how bad that first period was, and like people just like literally just trashing the Preds online for it. First of all, the Lightning lost their first game by 5 points too, or 5 goals too. Okay, the Preds lost by 5 goals too. It just is what it is. Come in, regroup, circle the wagons. You got your third string goalie in there. It is what it is at this point. Now, we did get an update from Hynes though on Saros today. So he said that he is skating without pads, and that obviously there's no really set timetable, but there's a possibility that he could start once they return back to Nashville at some point. That doesn't really sound good for game 3. It sounds more like a game 4 situation, in my opinion. But at that point, like, the damage might already be done, and we might already be close to getting bumped out. So, in my opinion, that's just kind of is what it is. Now, I will say for game 1, the best thing is Duchesne has like 2 goals against his former team, but the best part is the second goal, they're literally chanting Duchesne sucks, and he ends up on a breakaway and just absolutely destroys the goalie. And he just like casually, like he nets it, and he just kind of casually looks at the crowd, skates off into the sunset. And I was just like, that's got to feel good. Like going back in, like they're already talking trash, and you have 2 goals against your former team. It's like, that's a good night for you. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting series moving forward. I picked the Preds just because I was almost like the same thing for the Flames for Matt. I picked the Preds in 7 just because, and that's not really like just a homer thing. I literally cannot deal with Colorado breaking my bracket every single year. So it just was my pick for this year. But that said, I think this is going to be a tough series for the Preds to overcome at this point without Saros. And I think it's going to be way too much.
To Matt's ire, I also picked the Preds in 7.
Bunch of homers.
I know you call us homers, but to me, I figured if there was going to be any sort of upset that would bust people's brackets completely, it would be Nashville beating Colorado.
Well, I guess I'll give you guys a little credit. So I have heard from other people who are not Nashville market people that Colorado drawing Nashville was not an easy matchup. That if for Nashville to be a wild card for them was like they're a heavy hitting team for a wild card. So I would have even thrown around the idea of picking Nashville over Colorado if Saros had been in net. But once he got injured the last game of the season, I was like, oh, okay, well then I'm done. I'm not going to pick Nashville anymore. But I give you guys some credit. They're a strong team, but without Saros.
I literally have the Preds losing in the second round on my bracket too, so like it's not a big deal.
Oh,
like,
same. I got them losing too.
It's like it wasn't a homer thing. It was just like I can't stand to pick Colorado every year because I picked Colorado the last 2 years to win the cup, and they've like laid an egg in whatever round it is. So it's like it just for me, I had to pick something different.
And it's okay. You need some upsets anyway, and it's okay to root for your home team. I guess that's all right. I'll let it slide, boys.
Now, as we get ready to close the show down, because, we're recording this before the Preds' second game, so we don't know the results of tonight's game. Everything we're talking about could be obsolete by the time this episode comes out for the video and audio. But one thing I do want to talk about that we still do not have closure on yet is Philip Forsberg. He has not signed. GMDP seems confident that they can get something done in the offseason, but if the Preds, for whatever reason, go 4-0 in this playoff and lose and get bounced, or if they get all the way to a Game 7 and lose, do you think Philip Forsberg has had enough of the Preds? He loves the fan base, but you think he's had enough of just not being very good with this team? Because he's done great. Great season, but just can't get it done.
Yeah, I think there's 3 factors on this series. One's the Forsberg signing. One's John Hynes' contract and GMDP. And then you also have the Norris impact, which I'm sure Matt's going to want to talk about for a second. So let's start with Forsberg. And all signs indicate that they're still talking and that it is moving forward. He's talked with his agent again. So I really think it's just going to be a numbers thing. And I don't think for Forsberg it is like I'm going to go chase championship thing at this point. He just doesn't seem like that. He seems like he does want to be loyal here. He has a lot of roots here now. I know he has his fiance who's also a singer, and he's very tied to Nashville in a lot of ways. I think he does sign, but it is going to be interesting to see if we do get bumped in 4. And then also, if we do get bumped in 4, what about Hynes' contract? So do we extend him? Do we not? If Hynes leaves, does that factor into Forsberg leaving? I mean, there's a lot of working factors here that are absolutely going to be crucial to this series, and then also moving forward. And then also, if Forsberg doesn't sign, then what does that do to GMDP status? Because now you've been promising everybody and all the fans that it's going to get done. It's going to get done. We're this close on money. So when does the ownership group look at GMDP and say, hey, we're just kind of in an awkward, mediocre spot. The last several years, we've just barely eked into the playoffs and been getting wild card spots, but we haven't been getting good draft picks because you're in that awkward middle position, as Matt said before. So, at what point do you either start a rebuild, legit rebuild, I don't know. It's been an awkward situation, and I think the ownership group does have to take a look at that with GMDP after the end of the season, because if you just keep going first round and getting bumped off, you're never going to get anywhere. Like the ownership group is just very content with making the playoffs every year, but being the lowest seed at this point. So, man, there's so many factors, and that's going to be a whole nother rant and episode for probably off season, because there's going to be a ton of speculation for Forsberg, John Hynes, and GMDP after this. And then quickly moving over to the Norris, I've already seen it thrown around. Will this series impact the Norris Trophy decision? And it better flippin' not. That's all I'm going to say. I'm tired of it. Like, at the end of the year, Yossi ended up beating Makar by like 10 points. Hedman caught up to Makar and was like 2 points behind him. I don't want to hear it. The Norris Trophy needs to go to Yossi on everything, on every level. But the longer this playoff series goes on where they get trounced by them, which, by the way, just shows that they're the better team anyways. So I don't know why you're making my point, because like literally he's playing on a superstar team. But if they keep going and they have a long playoff run or whatever it is, and he's racking up tons of points, I'm going to be so mad, absolutely livid, if the Riders end up swaying and picking Makar over Yossi just because of the postseason, rather than a fantastic, absolute magical, never happened in the cap era season. Literally never happened in the salary cap era season. So, like, I'm going to be super livid.
Matt, you got any thoughts over there?
Yeah, I agree. You have a fanboy heart, and the stats merit what you're saying about Yossi should take home the Norris, but I think there definitely is some credibility to the idea that, realistically speaking, the playoffs will have an impact on Norris voting, and you're even seeing it like retweeted from the league, from the NHL. They're like, which defenseman is going to score more this series, and you have a specific Yossi versus Makar playoff series now. So now it's which one scores more in this series, and Avalanche is the heavily favored team, so they're going to score more. Makar's going to score more than Yossi, very likely. They're pushing this whole button issue even into the postseason about this Makar versus Yossi debate, and I think it definitely will have an impact on voting. So sounds good in theory that it shouldn't, but realistically it will.
I mean, like, that's my thing, is like, I'm taking all bias out for like me being a Preds fan. Like, if I'm just looking at the stats, I'm sorry, like, it is what it is. If this is Fox and Makar, I'm saying it goes to Fox. You know what I mean? Like, this is just not close, especially for the regular season. But the sad part is, Colorado is a big market team. They're going to get more of the, like you said, that banner, literally, it had both of them. It was like Yossi and Makar, where it was in the promotional banner for the defenseman for the points. And I'm like, really? Like, you're going to try to do that at this point? Like, these awards need to be given very soon after the regular season ends. That's my opinion, is like, you need to go ahead and do it so that there is no way you can be swayed by any playoff information whatsoever. If this is a regular season award, then it should have been awarded in between the start of the playoffs and the regular season. That's all I'm going to say.
It sounds awful defensive, almost like we're a little scared that we already see the way things are going.
Dude, but you know you're going to be mad.
Oh yeah, I agree.
You're gonna be.
I can just
livid.
tell even by our body language that we're definitely afraid.
You're gonna be livid. You're gonna absolutely be livid when it comes out. So I'm just saying, go put a few bets on Makar just to be safe.
And so, Matt, as we get ready to close the episode up, any stats that we can talk about?
Yeah, I got one or two other things I'll mention to you guys. First of all, Detroit fired their head coach, Jeff Blashill, which the fan base was very happy about. They've been wanting that for a couple of years. Number two is that this year we had 100 hat tricks in this year, which is the 11th most hat tricks in a season in NHL history. So scoring is up. In addition to that, Friday was the end of the regular season. That night, they had 104 goals scored that night, which is the most in one day in NHL history. So remember how, like, last year or a year before that, we were talking about, we need to make the goalie post bigger, make the pads smaller so we can get more goals in. No, scoring is up, dude. And just to show you, like, I guess it was Friday too, the last day of the year, the worst team in the league, the Canadians, dead last, by the way, from Stanley Cup Finals to dead last in the league, trounced the Panthers, the President's winning trophy team, 10-2. And yeah, Panthers had most of their guys resting for the playoffs, but still
I mean, it's still crazy though.
And let's see, what else is next? Oh, I would like to say, first of all, Ryan Getzlaf is retiring.
Yep.
Dustin Brown is retiring. And they have always had, that's SoCal area hockey. They've had this huge rivalry between their two teams, and it was something special whenever Dustin Brown kind of went over there and hugged him and was like, we hated each other our whole careers, but like we're going out as brothers. It's time to retire in style, and they're going out. So it's very sad to see. Also, it looks like I think Andy Green's retiring. I think Keith Yandel might retire. We don't know about this one. We don't know. So we know Brown and Getzlaf are. The big question marks is Yandel, Andy Green, and the big one is Zdeno Chara. It seemed, I watched the broadcast from the Islanders that night, the last night. It seemed to the broadcasters, they were basically saying goodbye. He's had a good career. They were sending him off. It's nothing official, and he said he doesn't know his plans yet. But he was waving bye to the arena. All the players kind of gave him a handshakes on the way out the door. So everybody's pointing to he very well could retire, and that is going to be devastating because that's one of my favorite players.
Yeah, to your point, the Lightning even went over and congratulated him because I think that was the last game, and like all of their veterans went and give him a hug, handshake, and he ended up scoring a goal with like 50 seconds left too. Like yes. That was like the cherry on top, So it was definitely like that storybook ending, like that you want to see for a veteran, especially for someone who's played as long as he has. So it did seem kind of official. It almost gave me like Pekka vibes on that last game, where like he pitches a shutout and like has like his moment with the fans around and does the lap. It was kind of similar to that, to where it seemed more like a tribute to him, just in case.
So a couple stats I'll leave you guys with is that Roman Josi is just the fifth defenseman in history to have 95 points and lead their team in points. And he's only the fourth person in history, defenseman-wise, to 95 points and not have a 100-point player on the team.
In history, by the way, for those poll voters out there, that are still on the fence.
Yeah.
Just for Matt.
That's right. And your boy, Sidney Crosby, now has the most regular season overtime points in history, number 1. And he also just recently, last day or two ago, passed Yager and ties Fedorov as 8th most playoff assists in history. And Austin Matthews also has back-to-back Rocket Richard trophies, which is only the third player in history to do so. So heck of a night for many of these good players. So,
yeah, as much as I had to say it, Matthews had an incredible year. I mean, like goal-wise, he was on. What was his goal pace that at one point? He had matched Mario Lemieux for like goals in a specific span of time, and I'm like, that's crazy because that guy was a goal-scoring machine back in the day. So for him to be doing that nowadays, it's a pretty impressive feat.
Somebody mentioned the other day that they thought he's going to be in the consideration for best American of all time when it's all said and done.
I think so.
For sure.
Like, I think, who's probably up there right now for America? Kane?
Patty Kane, probably.
I think he catches Kane, for sure, especially at this pace. Like, if he is scoring 60 goals a year, that's staggering. I mean, like, you could be seeing him kind of approaching, like, Ovi status towards the end if he kept that up. But we'll see.
And guys, that's going to be the show for today. Thank you so much for joining us. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can find us at Music City Gold. If you want to follow us on YouTube, you can find us at Music City Gold as well. And if you want to find us on iTunes, you can find us in 2 different places. First one being Music City Gold on iTunes and Penalty Box Radio. And finally, you can find us on penaltyboxradio.com. Until next time, we will see you on the ice.